I would now like to introduce the second session for this afternoon, and that is on the Cafe Week of Action. So if I could please welcome to the stage, we have first up Elena Popova, the newly appointed Disability Access Officer of the Russian Football Union. We have Owen Davis, the Chief Executive of Level Playing Field in England and Wales. We have Albert Alvarez Blanco from FC Barcelona, and we should hopefully have Beverly from St. Johnstone also. Here we go. So I'll briefly just give a little oversight into the Cafe Week of Action. We established the Week of Action to be a celebration of all things access and inclusion, and it came out of our works in Poland and Ukraine around UEFA Euro 2012. The fans and the partners that we worked with in both countries wanted to continue the great works that the tournament had brought. So we established a legacy project, and the Cafe Week of Action was a big part of that. Over the years, more and more countries found out about what was happening with the Week of Action and wanted to get involved themselves, and we took the decision to expand the Week of Action across Europe and even further beyond Europe in some cases also. The Cafe Week of Action is an annual initiative, and it brings together all stakeholders from across the game in one clear message of access and inclusion for all. We call it Total Football, Total Access. You'll have found in your delegate packs today we have unofficially announced the dates for the 2019 Cafe Week of Action, which will take place from the 2nd to the 10th of March 2019. We invite you all to join us to celebrate the Cafe Week of Action this season. If it's not possible to have any activities within that time frame, then please do let us know. We can always look to expand. We'll always promote the great works that you are doing, and we want to know what you guys are doing to celebrate Total Football, Total Access. I was told going way back 5 or 6 years ago that there's more to football than just football, and I think the Cafe Week of Action is a great celebration of the other great work that happens through this game that we all love so much. So I'm going to pass over to the panel now and ask a few questions of you guys, if that's okay. So Albert, I'll start with you if that's okay. Albert, the Disability Access Officer of FC Barcelona. Albert, why did Barcelona want to get involved in the Cafe Week of Action?
Well, hi, good afternoon to everybody. When we first heard about the project, was 3 years ago, we understood that we shared the same goals. We believed it was really interesting for us. Nowadays, in football, you can have the best facilities, you can have the best stadiums or the best football players, but at the end, everything has to do with the fans. And one big problem we've always found is that if we apply accessibility policies, but our fans don't know about them, it makes no sense. So we thought that the Week of Action was a great tool to show our fans that everybody needs to get involved in that.
Thank you very much, Albert. Obviously, at a club of the size of FC Barcelona, there'll be some challenges to bringing through an initiative such as the Week of Action. Could you tell us some of the challenges that you may have faced and how you dealt with them?
Well, the main difficulties we always found is, we've talked about it a few times, nowadays football it's very a popular sport, and it's important in every corner in the world. So sponsors are also everywhere in the world. When you have an important game, you have sponsors before the game, during the game, after the game, in every screen, on TV, everywhere. And one of the main challenges was to be able to show the image of the Cafe Week of Action everywhere. The board of directors was really happy with it. Our players were really happy with it. So what we achieved was being able to put the image of the Cafe Week of Action everywhere. And that means before the kickoff, football players took a picture with kids and with the Cafe Week of Action image. Then it was in every screen, it was on the social media, it was on the website. It was in all the Catalan sports news next day. So it was hard, but we made it. And especially last time, you remember, we were playing against Atletico de Madrid, which was one of the biggest games in the Spanish league at that time. We're a bit scared that we were not going to make it because it was going to be watched in every corner in the world. But on the contrary, it made it better. So in every single country of the world, you could see the image, and we are really proud we could help.
Thank you very much for that. In terms of the ethos at FC Barcelona, it's very well known the club runs by the motto Més que un club, which translates into more than a club. Do you see the Cafe Week of Action falling within that also?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's like a twin brother somehow. I mean, we share these values. We define ourselves as a club based on universality, with social commitment. We defend the way we are Catalan, and we want to put these Catalan values on the table. And one of them is to try that everybody is able to watch a football game and everybody has the same rights. It's social justice. It's something that Cafe works very hard for. So I think it fulfills the objectives in every way. Yes.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Turning now to Beverly, you're the Disability Access Officer and also the Supporter Liaison Officer at St Johnstone in Scotland. So could you tell us a little bit around how St Johnstone became to get involved in the Cafe Week of Action?
So our stadium is 30 years old, and when it was first built in 1989, it was the first purpose-built all-seater stadium in the whole of the UK. So there was a lot of interest in our stadium at the time, but we didn't build it with accessible facilities. So over the years, over the last 3 decades, we've improved the facilities. We've included 3 different wheelchair viewing platforms. We've had ADC for over 25 years now. We now have the radio system where the facilities can be used in any of the 4 stands that we have. And we've made improvements to the car park. We've added extra accessible bays, and we've got a new booking system in place. So, but like Albert said, we don't do enough to shout about it. There's not enough supporters that know what facilities we have. And if you don't make it easy for them to find out, then they won't come. And it's all about getting people to the football and making it more inclusive. So that's why we decided to get involved in the Cafe Week of Action.
It's fantastic, thank you. Albert mentioned some of the challenges that he's faced at FC Barcelona in bringing around Cafe Week of Action activities. Have you faced similar challenges at St Johnstone? Obviously, it's clubs at quite different ends of the spectrum. So,
slightly smaller crowd at St Johnstone. The biggest challenge that we faced was the original date, because the Cafe Week of Action is about 10 days. So the original date that our event was to go ahead, the match was postponed 48 hours before because we had a massive snowfall. So the pitch was under 1.5 feet of snow. So all our plans had gone out the window. But look for the silver lining, because the game then went ahead. It was 3 days after the end of the Cafe Week of Action event, but it was live on TV, which the original game wouldn't have been. So it had almost triple the crowd. It was against Hibernian. Triple the crowd that it would have been if had it gone against on the original date. We had the LEDs because it was live on TV, so I managed to get the cafe logo along the LEDs where the sponsors would normally be. Everything we'd originally planned for the original date was just transferred to the new date. Bigger audience, more exposure, and for the benefit of the game, and more exposure for the accessible facilities we have. So.
Perfect, thank you very much. And just finally for you, Beverly, you've obviously been a big supporter of the Cafe Week of Action, and your support for the campaign in the last few years has been invaluable to us. It's been really helped to push us along. How has the Cafe Week of Action affected you in terms of your role at the club, and how does it affect disabled fans at St Johnstone?
For me personally, it's inspired me. I think Joyce and Paolo mentioned earlier on, it's a never-ending journey. There's no final destination. there's no end game. You've got to keep moving on. Once you've found a solution to one problem, you move on to the next one. As a club, we make sure that facilities are available to visiting supporters as equally as they are to home supporters. And also, we went on to win 3 months after we did the Cafe Week of Action. We were nominated by a user-led organisation in Perthshire. We were nominated to win a Most Accessible Venue Award. We were shortlisted along with 5 other venues, and we actually won it by a landslide vote. So we must be doing something right, which is pleasing for us. So yeah, very proud of our club.
You definitely are doing something right. Thank you very much, Beverly. Elena, I'm going to turn to you now. You're the newly appointed Disability Access Officer in Russia, and you've been a long-time supporter of Cafe and our works. Russia, in last season's Cafe Week of Action, blew all records away for the amount of activities that one country had. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and some of the highlights from the campaign last year?
Sure. Hello, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share our experience with a Cafe Week of Actions in Russia. And first of all, we sent official letters to clubs of the Premier League and the First Division, FNL, Football National League. And all the clubs of the First Division participated in this Week of Actions, and that was amazing. And I want to tell that in March, in the beginning of March, it's still cold in Russia, it's still winter, and we have snow. And but the clubs participated, and that was fantastic. And some clubs had their games in the indoor arena, and most of them, of course, participated, had their games outside. But unfortunately, we don't have here pictures, but it was like a lot of snow, and children with the T-shirts of Max Access, and they're holding banners, and disabled people also attending. And the most important was that the clubs showed their interest in involving more disabled people to the stadium. And if we talk about the Premier League clubs, I would talk about CSK Moscow and Spartak Moscow, the most active clubs. All of them provided meetings with disabled fans, with the players and management of clubs. They could take pictures and talk. And CSK Moscow also provided a stadium tour for disabled people. Unfortunately, our stadium is not fully accessible, but they suggested to make accessible road. So we met and decided to make an accessible road in the stadium. Invited disabled people. In this case, there were wheelchair users, and we held this stadium tour, and it was fantastic. And now CSK Moscow is continue working with disabled fans, and they want to hold one more stadium tour, and that is fantastic also. And about Spartak Moscow, they had escort players, and that was actually a dream of their fan. And he went to the pitch with the captain, and that was actually his dream. He was so inspired by this, and it's really amazing.
Fantastic, thank you very much. In terms of your role now with the Russian Football Union, how does the RFU support the Cafe Week of Action, and how important is the Cafe Week of Action to the RFU?
Of course, it is very important, and we sent letters with the official letters with the signatures of our management, and also RFU provided all the contacts of all the clubs and organizations. So we contact clubs directly, and as well that is a very great thing that the RFU has DO, Disability Access Officer, that is a new role, but that is very useful because clubs need to contact too, and they need to, for example, if we talk to Week of Actions, if we want to have it on the highest level, they need to advise with, and it's great that they can contact the review and receive all the necessary information.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And just finally, Elena, it's often said there's a lot of weeks of action, a lot of different campaigns. Do you think that disability access and inclusion should be part of a wider discrimination week of action campaign, or should it have its own cafe week of action the way we do?
I think that more campaigns we have, more attendance we have on the stadiums, and that raises awareness. But I would say that, to my opinion, I would leave this separate and continue doing this week of actions, because that is really brings an amazing results, and that shows how important it is.
Brilliant. Thank you
Thanks.
very much. Finally, last but not least, I'll turn to Owen Davis, the Chief Executive of Level Playing Field in England and Wales. Owen, Level Playing Field's had a weeks of action, which goes a week longer than the cafe one, that's run for a number of years now, since 2005. What sort of support do you receive from the associations, from the leagues and the clubs within England and Wales?
We get a huge amount of support, if we're being absolutely honest. I think we're really lucky in we get from the Premier League point of view. There's obviously the DAO and the designated support that it's very much on the agenda, and more often than not, the clubs who have strong DSAs and work in collaboration come together to kind of provide that opportunity and to raise awareness and to share that information, which is more often than not a barrier for disabled people, or lack of information. And the support we get is quite astounding. We have, I suppose, a good case study, really. We work with the EFL, and the way that the support that they practically do it, they will encourage the clubs, and very much, Elena said, they'll send out their communication plans, and they'll encourage clubs to do. And what they did in the last weeks of action, they provided every single match day programs of the EFL clubs. Their page was allocated to the Level Playing Field weeks of action. So it was there across every single club for the 2 weeks that we did it. And it just raises that awareness. And it also has, when you get that buy-in from the top, it cascades all the way down. And when you go down to the lower leagues as well, that's that understanding, that impetus from that as well, really.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. A little earlier, Albert and Beverly both spoke about the reasons why they wanted to get involved in the Cafe Week of Action. How easy do you find it to liaise with some of the bigger clubs in England and Wales, and how does that differ to maybe some of the smaller clubs further down the pyramid?
I think one of the things as well is that, more often than not, maybe the stereotype is that the bigger clubs have greater facilities, and I think we've benefited obviously from the Premier League pledge and the commitment towards access and inclusion. The game's never been more accessible from a Premier League point of view, and I suppose we're through a phase that this is the start, and it's about how we progress that, and clubs are very keen to kind of champion and to promote the work they're doing. But one of the things we do, and there's the number of DAOs in the audience today, and you'll hear from them. So John, who you speak from Tottenham, and Rachel from Everton, is kind of engaging with them and talking about how we can actually bring the weeks of action to life. And one of the things I want to avoid from is that it's not just a case of putting a T-shirt on, holding a banner, and that's it. What's the legacy of the weeks of action? How can you bring it to life? And we're seeing clubs making access videos and launching DSAs in the weeks of action, and really bringing the weeks of action to life and showing that it's more than just showing support to a campaign. And that's been really beneficial and a good impact on that.
Fantastic. And just finally, Owen, if there's a club or a national association who hasn't taken part in either the Cafe Week of Action or the Level Playing Field Weeks of Action before, why would you tell them they should get involved?
I think it goes back to that awareness changes perception, and I think there's a number of people have thrown out statistics, and I'll probably misquote people throughout the whole day, but that 50% of the same people haven't attended a live event or take part in recreational activity, and the barriers to that are substantial. There's a lot of them, but one of them is in lack of information or lack of awareness of facilities. We've been in a culture of inaccessibility, and the thing is that we have to break those barriers by sharing that information, by championing what's good and highlighting the positives. Like, going to sport is far more than just watching sport. It's uniting with your community, it's engaging with your community. And as a club point of view as well, is that your stand should represent your community, and making sure that we're bringing everyone together and having that positive experience, and it's an equal opportunity for all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We have time just for a couple of quick questions from the floor, either from myself or for the guys on the panel. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Or is everyone ready for coffee? In that case, then, I'd like to say a big thank you to the panel. And again, we'll all be round for the rest of the conference. So if you do have something you'd like to discuss further, please do come and find us and come and speak to us. And once again, I invite you all to take part in next season's Cafe Week of Action. The dates will be the 2nd till the 10th of March, but again, we can be flexible and we're more than happy to promote events either before or after this time. If you have any ideas or anything you'd like to discuss further, please do come and find us and speak to us. Thank you very much.